Well, this is my uncle, Elvin Lewis. How old are you now, Elvin?
87.
87. Where were you born?
Where?
Yeah, where were you born?
I was born in Blue Water.
Well, is that right?
Yeah.
Now, for some reason, I thought you was born down in the colonies.
No, I was 2 years old when my dad went down.
Okay.
Hazel was born there, and Ike was born
All right.
down there, but they're just down there on a visit when
Yeah.
he was born.
Now, there was you and Asel and Ike and Ralph
And Pearl,
Farrell. I didn't...
he was the oldest.
Okay, I might not have ever known him.
Uh-huh.
And I remember your... Did you have any sisters?
No sisters.
No sisters, just boys.
Just boys.
Well, what's the pecking order? So Farrell was the oldest,
Yeah.
and
Ike.
then Ike,
And me.
and then you,
Ralph.
Ralph, and
And
Asel. Okay. Now is Asel still alive?
Yeah. Why don't we come in to the table? Maybe I can hear you.
All right.
We're going to be by here. And
Well, and the whole area is built up so much.
the what?
The whole area out here, there's so many new places.
Oh, yeah. It's
A lot.
Well, anyway, you said Asel is still alive. Where's he living?
He's in West Virginia.
What in the world got him to West Virginia?
Well, he he got in with an outfit. I don't know how it come about, but he run their outfit. They owned this big outfit up there in West Virginia, a lot of land and ranch outfit, and so he got in with them somewhere, and he run that ranch till he got so old he couldn't. Well, no, 2 or 3 years he run it for them.
Yeah.
And then they quit it for some reason, and they leased the ranch to him, and so he used it till he got so old he couldn't handle it no more, but he still lives there, and he subleased it to somebody else, and they're living there.
Yeah.
They're running cattle on it. Let me get my teeth in here.
All right. Okay.
They take care of the place, and there's another set of houses and stuff on the ranch, and
That's not mine, that's Elvin's.
No, this is mine.
No, it's
is that my phone?
Yep, that's your phone. Okay, we're back on. Well, how did Chalk meet Mike?
Well, I guess it's when they was run out of Mexico that time with Pancho Villa,
Uh-huh.
and they come out to Blue Water, and
The Wettons did.
the Wettons
Yeah.
did, and they was around there, and that's when they met.
Uh-huh.
And I guess they was there 2 or 3 years, and they got married there.
Yeah. Now,
They just stayed here then, and the rest of them went on back down there after so long a time. I don't know just how long it was.
now you lived down there for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, we was there about 10 years, I guess.
And at what age was that for you? How old were you then?
Well, I think I was about 12 years old when we come out of there.
Well, where was your dad from?
Well, he was born right there in Blue Water, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all we know about him. I mean, of his family, we don't know anything.
You never did know your grandparents on his side then, huh?
Well, we knew the grandmother,
Uh-huh.
but she wouldn't tell one word about him, not a word.
Well, what was her maiden name, do you know?
Oh, I don't have any idea.
Uh-huh. Now we're
The first we ever heard of them was they got married over here in Mancus,
okay.
and they called him Cimarron.
Uh-huh.
And they went from there down into the Blue Water country, and they
Okay.
worked for Joe Titchen. He broke horses for
Uh-huh.
Joe Titchen
Uh-huh.
for a while. And my dad was only 2 years old then when
Okay.
he got shot over there at El Moro.
Oh, is that right? What happened? Tell me the story about that.
Well, he's trying to hold up a mail carriage.
Uh-huh.
So they tell me, and old man Kirk told me this.
Uh-huh.
He's the only one that I ever saw that really knew him.
Uh-huh.
And he said that's what he's trying to do, trying to hold up that stage. And he got shot in the process.
Killed him then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, by golly, that happens once in a while, I guess.
Yeah, that could happen.
Well, what about your mom's parents? What do you remember about them?
Oh, I know a lot about them. They went back to old Mexico.
Right.
Of course, they left everything they had down there. They did get their cattle out.
Uh-huh.
They went back down there, and most of them people, they got most of their cattle out.
Yeah.
And that's the
That
only
was
thing.
when Pancho Villa was down there
Yeah.
raising hell. Yeah. Yeah.
And so then they went back down there again and just rebuilt and
Uh-huh.
started all over again. They just left everything, houses, everything they had. They just was allowed to pack 2 suitcases,
Uh-huh.
I think, to leave there with.
Well, what year would that have been? Would that have been in the early 20s or what?
Yeah, that would have been. Oh, I'd probably been around 14 or 15.
Okay.
Somewhere along there. I
Okay.
don't know.
So before they got married?
Who?
Before your parents got married? is
Oh,
that-
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah, they didn't get married till they come out of there when
Yeah.
Pancho was on the rampage.
Now your grandpa was a polygamist that had moved down there when the
Yeah.
when
he
the
went-
government started raising
Yeah,
hell with them.
when
wasn't
they
it?
when
Yeah.
they passed that law here,
Yeah.
well, he finally packed up and moved down
Yeah.
there.
How many wives did he have?
Well, he had 4.
Uh-huh. Now did you know them all?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Did you have a favorite?
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, the one we called Grandma.
Uh-huh.
My grandmother had already died. I
Okay.
never did know her, but his first wife, that's the one we called
Uh-huh.
Grandma.
Uh-huh.
And then Claire Hassel's wife, my mother.
Okay.
He married her as
Okay.
the last one. No, as the third one.
Uh-huh.
And
I just met Claire one time when I was a little kid.
oh, well, it's his mother. She's a real nice old lady.
Uh-huh.
And then there's another one. We never did know much about her.
Uh-huh. Well, now how old was your grandpa when he died?
Well, he was only in his 60s, I guess.
Uh-huh.
I thought he was in his 70s, but Ike told me he's only in his
Okay.
60s.
So how old were you when he died? Did you know him fairly well?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I was 12.
Okay.
It's the first year we was out here.
Okay. Yeah. Did he go of natural causes, or did he get hurt, or what?
Well, no, he just. She said they started to get up, and he says, "I got a headache." Says, "I think I'll lay here a while." So she got up and went down, got breakfast, and come up to wake him up, and he's dead.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, you scared me a little bit after I beat on the door and hollered in here.
Do what?
I said, you scared me a little bit today after I beat on the door and hollered, and finally went back to look for you, and you're laying there on the bed, and I wasn't sure whether I ought to knock or just get the hell out, you know.
I hadn't heard it.
Well, now how far did you go in school?
Well, I went a little while in the 8th grade, but I never did pass a grade after I went to the 5th grade. Or I never did get a report card after that. In the 6th grade, I quit school about the 1st of April. And my dad sent me down on the Chico there to stay as furlough. And then, no, that's, the 6th grade. And, oh, let's see. I guess that was the 7th grade. The next year I went a while, no, the next year, that was the 6th grade, and the next year is the 7th. And we had them Mexican teachers there in San Mateo. And they was all raised down there at Bernalillo, and they couldn't hardly talk English. And I just didn't get along in school at all. And and the last one, he was a man teacher, and I hated him.
You kind of like Charlie was. That schooling was getting in the way of your education.
Yeah. And so my dad took his cattle down into Hole in the Wall that winter, and so.
Now, where exactly is Hole in the Wall?
Well, that's down in the Malapais.
Okay.
Below Grants.
Okay.
They've made a national monument out of it now, I think, the Malapais Monument.
Yeah, I know they got a national monument.
Well, there's that lava flow just went in a circle and just fenced in about.
Okay, I know where you're talking about now. Yeah.
Well, it's a real good country, but no water.
Right.
And we moved down there. There's some water holes there, and it looked like it's probably all right.
Yeah.
But we got by that winter on the snow. There's quite a little snow, and then we had to move out of there.
Yeah.
But then the next year, I got another one of them Bernalillo teachers, and I went about a month, I guess, and I got enough of that, and I left.
That's kind of close to the same story Jerry Mitchell tells. You know, you guys were pretty good friends.
Oh yeah.
And he was the same way. They put him in the orphanage, you know, and he'd run away. And they'd catch him and bring him back. And when he was 14, he ran away, and they said, "Good riddance, stay gone." Well, so then you worked mostly cattle as a young man then?
Oh yeah, all my life actually, until I was a contract in there, and for that short time. Oh, I don't know, 7 or 8 years there.
Well, how did you meet Laureen?
Well, we met at the dance there at the Rue one night.
Was she staying with
She's staying with Nass, Kurt.
Yeah.
And actually, she's the postmaster there in Theroux.
Well, I'll be darned, I didn't know
all
that.
All through the war.
Now, you guys didn't know each other too long before you got married, I think.
Well, no, about 2 months, I guess. Well, let's see. No, I got out in December, and it's April the 3rd when I got married.
'Cause I remember when my daughter Crystal got married, why, I was kind of concerned because she hadn't known him very long, you know, and I was telling Laureen, and she said, "Well, Elvin and I didn't know each other too long either." And she said, "We lasted quite a while."
Oh, yeah, we did.
Well, now, first memory I have of you is up on the farm at Blanco.
Oh.
And now, how long did you farm there?
Well, we bought that farm just a month or so after we got married.
Okay.
We moved up there, and we farmed there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I guess.
What was your wedding date?
Huh?
What was your wedding date?
It's April the 3rd,
What year?
1946.
Okay. Did you make any money at the farm? Was it a good
Well,
life?
it was real good for about 4 years.
Uh-huh.
We went into hog business right away,
Right.
and right after the war, well, man, that was good business. There's a good price,
Uh-huh.
and it don't take long getting the hog business. I bought me 10 sows when I first went up there.
Uh-huh.
And man, I was in the hog business pretty quick.
Yeah, it doesn't take. We bought one sow when we got to Missouri, and we were in the hog business a lot more than we wanted to be.
Well, I did real good at it. I farrowed them twice a year, and I put off about 200 hogs.
Yeah.
And it was real good for about 4 years, and then the time just the hog population finally caught up,
Uh-huh.
and it just went down to just barely breaking even. And I got a chance to, well, I started to go to work for an oil outfit, and this guy come along and wanted me to skin a cat for him.
Yeah.
So I took him up on it, and
Was that your first time on a cat, or you?
yeah,
done,
it's my first time. I've never been around him, and so I worked for him for all through the summer, and then I decided, well, heck, it looked like there's pretty good money in that.
Yeah.
I just hit him up to buy him out,
Uh-huh.
and he took me up on it. Told me how much he wanted for it. He had a brand new D8 cat,
Uh-huh.
and got his cat and all his tools and truck and the whole outfit.
Yeah.
And I was in the dirt business then for several years.
I remember that. You were in the dirt business still when I was living with you that
Yeah,
year in through.
yeah.
That would have been 52, I believe. 52 or 53.
Well, I was into it till up to about 57. That's when I left there. Your dad worked for me for quite a while.
Yeah, I knew he did. Yeah. Now, did he ever get up to see you before he died?
Yeah, he did.
Good.
He come up here, and he was doing good then.
Yeah.
And he said, by golly, he just got tired of sitting around, and he decided he'd do something.
Yeah.
And I can understand that.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what happened to me.
Well, you know, when he had that heart attack, they were going to do a bypass on him. And they run that camera up through his groin and took a look and said, there ain't enough there to work with. Go home and get your affairs in order.
Do what?
They told him, they said, there's not enough heart left there for us to do anything with. You go home and get your affairs in order.
Oh.
And so he went back and he lived another year, I believe.
Yeah.
And he got back to where he was cutting cordwood again.
Oh yeah. When he's up here, he said, I just got tired of sitting around.
Yeah.
I had to go to work, and said I go out and went in the wood business, and doing pretty good, and no problems.
Yeah.
All at once, he just keeled over, I guess.
Yeah, he was out cutting wood, him and another guy, and after a little while, the other guy realized he hadn't heard Jerry's chainsaw for a while, so he went over to check on him, and he's laying there dead beside his chainsaw. And,
well, that can happen.
yeah. Well, but you know, that's a whole lot better way to go than.
Oh, sure. Sitting in a chair.
That's right.
Well, that's what happened to me. I had several stents put in me, well,
Uh-huh.
3 of them, and angioplasty, and the last time I went down there, well, them stents got to plugging up,
Uh-huh.
and I'd go down there and they'd unplug them, and I'd come back up here, and about 3 months, so he's plugged up again.
Yeah.
I go down there. Finally, they put another stent inside of another stent. And so that
Yeah.
held for about a year. And then come on kind of gradual.
Yeah.
Boy, I just waited it out till I got so darn bad that I was afraid I couldn't even get to Albuquerque again. And I went down and had my doctor make an appointment down there, and he couldn't get one for about 2 weeks. But he finally got it. And Milton went down with me, and we got in there, and I got on the operating table, and they run that dye through me, and that doctor says, well, that thing is 95% plugged, but says he's got, the only thing we can do is give him a bypass. And she says his heart's only working at 15%, so we can't do that. Said he wouldn't live through the operation.
Making sure I was recording here. Well, tell me the story about the government stealing your farm up there.
Well, they just decided to build that dam up there, and instead of getting the dirt off in their own land, they had everything around there was government land except them little old farms right in the bottom of the river. And instead of getting it off their own land, well, they decided to just take all them farms. And that's what they did. And of course we fought them over it, but we didn't get nowhere.
You didn't get near as much money out of the farm as it was worth, did you?
Oh no, I couldn't replace it. That's why I went to Alaska.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
They made me an offer and I turned it down. And so next thing I knew, I was down on my lower farm there. I had 2 farms there. And I come up home, I saw them cats walking up the road. Never thought anything about it. I got up there and it was on my land, just working like the Dickens. And so I went to the house and got my gun, and I come back up there and I pulled up all their stakes. Had it staked out there where they was going to set their camp. And so I pulled up all their stakes and threw them away, and of course them cat skinners, they didn't have nothing to do with it. They didn't know anything about it.
Sure.
There wasn't nothing they could do after them stakes was gone. So they got in their cats and went on back. And we went on back to Gallup that evening, and that night, well, here come a United Federal Marshal. And he told me what it was like. They was going to take it. There wasn't nothing I could do about it. I might as well get used to it.
That didn't set real well, did it?
No, it sure didn't. So we went down there, and several of us from them farmers up there went down there, and we hired old David Chavis. Oh, that senator's brother. And oh yeah, he could get us, at least get us more money for it. All he did was take money from us. Cost us more for him than it would have been if we'd
just give the farm away.
Just give the farm back.
My.
So finally let him go. I got out of that.
Well, how long did you live in Alaska?
Well, we was there 20 years. You was there all that time, wasn't you?
I was there 38.
Oh yeah, you stayed longer. Yeah, we was 20 years.
Now, how did you acquire the property up at Bald Mountain? Did you buy that, or?
Well, That's oh, what is his name? That guy that run the dairy there.
I don't know. I don't know who had the dairy out there.
Well, he'd homesteaded up there,
Okay.
and he's raising them dairy calves for the dairies in Palmer, and he had about 50 of them there, I guess.
Yeah.
And he decided to quit that and go down and go to school and become a preacher.
Well, it probably paid better than raising dairy calves.
Well, yeah, it would. Should have done it myself. But anyway, he wanted Bruce Anderson, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it was. Bruce Anderson.
And he wanted to sell out, and he wanted $10,000 for everything he had there. He had a little crawler tractor and a international tractor and all of his household goods, which he had a lot of, I mean. And
now, how many acres do you have there? Was it 100?
Well, it's
120?
160 acres.
160, okay.
Was a homestead.
Yeah.
And he's going to relinquish that so I could refile on it. And a lot of equipment and tools and stuff went with it, so I took him up on it. And Gary was going to go in with me.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he went up there and stayed all through the winter, and we run out of feed, so we had to move all the cattle up to head the bay. We had more feed up there.
Right.
So while I was up there, he got cold feet and just pulled out. I know his wife had more to do with it than he did.
Well, I think so. Yeah, she didn't like that out on the homestead life very much.
Well, no. So anyway, they pulled out, and I just stayed with it, and I went ahead and proved up on that, and finally got a pretty good outfit going there. We were doing real good till when we left there. Land just got worse so much it couldn't stay there.
Right. Now, you built a slaughterhouse up there. Was that was that a moneymaker for you? Or?
Oh yes, it was real good. Yeah, we were butchering about 200 head of cattle there a year, me and my wife. Well, Milton, it's our, we're butchering all of ours. We had about almost 100 head of ours. And then everybody in the country, your dad, he brought his over there. And everybody that had 2 or 3 or a dozen, Rainwater brought theirs there, and Coonses.
And then you bought 2 homesteads, wasn't it, up the head of the bay from?
Yeah, Milton bought 2 homesteads up there.
Maddox, one of them was Maddox's homestead.
Both of them.
Both of them.
Well, he homesteaded one of them. He'd bought. Well, he got the other in some way. I don't think he bought it, but he wound up with it.
Yeah. And how come you decided to come back?
Oh, well, we were both getting arthritis darn bad working in that slaughterhouse. You had to keep it cool, you know. And my wife was getting real bad. Her back was bad. She did the wrapping, and I did the cutting, and she just getting to where she couldn't take it, and I was too. My hand was getting so bad I couldn't hold a butcher knife. And I decided, well, we better get out of there, because it's just going to get worse at all. And Dorothy, she wanted to go get out of there, so. Milton, he didn't want to go, but didn't argue too much.
Well, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And how old were Eddie and Bryce and Marcy when they left?
Well, I guess Eddie and them, they was in high school.
Uh-huh.
They went to high school first winter down
Okay.
here.
What year was it that you left?
As in 77.
Yeah. Well, you served in World War II, didn't you?
Yeah.
Were you in the Army or?
Yeah, I was combat engineers.
Okay. And you were in Europe.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was just a war, just like all wars. Everybody got killed,
Yeah.
or a lot of them. I didn't get a scratch, only one time was, we were sweeping for mines.
Uh-huh.
Whenever as the front moved, well, we had to sweep for mines, all that, as they moved on.
Mm-hmm.
And we was sweeping down the shoulders on the roads. That's where they planted a lot of mines.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd come to an old German tank was still burning. And just as we got even with that, I was holding that darn thing, and an explosion in that tank, and a piece of shrapnel just cut across my finger.
Okay.
And it just bled like a stuck hole. And medics, he said, well, come on, let's go to the medic. You get a Purple Heart for that. And I said, well, hell, I ain't gonna get no Purple Heart for that.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna go.
Yeah.
So I didn't go, and then later, when we was building a bridge across the Rhine, well, we was under real bad fire, just all day long. And so there's 88s would come in. They had us, they had us pegged when they first got there.
Now the 88, was that artillery or what?
That's an artillery shell that the Germans had.
Yeah.
It's the best one that was in that war.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't another one that would equal them. And just as soon as we got there and just started unloading to build that bridge, it just daylight, just barely getting daylight. And a barrage of shells come in. They had to have an observer right there somewhere that was telling them what they're doing. And there's a big ditch right behind there, and everybody got in that ditch for a little while, and they didn't shoot anymore for a little bit, so we got up and went to work. And them shells started coming in again, and so we stayed with it that time. And
did you lose very many guys on that bridge?
Huh?
Did you lose very many men on that bridge?
Well, I don't know how many, because I know several, because we was, we had two air compressors, big air compressors, just one truck. All it was an air compressor, two of them trucks, and so we could run two hoses off each truck.
Okay.
And me and another guy was on one of them, blowing up these pontoons.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a boat. Well, when we got the pontoons loaded up, well, it'd pull them down into the edge of the river, and there's a truck there that had the tread on it.
Okay.
It's a big steel tread about that wide on each side.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd back up there, and he had a hoist right on his truck that he'd pick one up, and he'd set it on two of them pontoons, and two of them. and they'd strap them on there, and they'd take it off up to the bridge, and they'd hook them together with pins.
Yeah.
So we was working there. We'd been there an hour or so, and I looked out there, and there come the darn guy floating down the river. And so that
oh dear, that must have been terrible.
yeah, that guy, we towed that boat, and he went out there and got him. All you could see was his head.
Yeah.
I thought it was a duck at first, and as he got a little closer, we could see it was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And they drug him in, and so it took about 6 of us to get him out of the darn water. And as soon as the air hit him, man, he just went to shaking, so you couldn't hold on to him.
Uh-huh.
And so we called for an ambulance, and they wasn't none. They's all gone. And there's about 5 or 6 ambulances there all the time, and they's all hauling people in, so there must have been quite a few of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we loaded him in our squad truck, and our medic, he showed up with a bunch of blankets and wrapped him up good, and he rode in the back end of the back of the truck with him, and they took him off to the hospital, but that's the last we know of him. We don't know what happened.
So you don't know whether he made it or not?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless they pull through it and come back to the outfit.
Sure.
But he was an infantryman.
Uh-huh.
There's our line companies, or 2 of them, had that morning at 3 o'clock, they got down there, they had boats, and they ferried these infantrymen across the river. And evidently he'd shot a boat out from under him, or he'd fell out, or I don't know what. And anyway, he'd been floating down that river all that time.
Do you remember what town it was close to where you built the
Worms.
bridge?
I remember that very good.
Yeah, Charlie, you know, I was over there, lived over there from 62 to 65.
Yeah.
And then Charlie and I just got back from 2 weeks over there.
From what?
Charlie and I just spent 2 weeks over there.
Oh, you did?
And boy, the change between 65 and 2007.
I bet.
You know, when I was over there, the barracks we were staying in, they had big old gouges over the top of the doors there where they chiseled the swastikas off of the barracks.
Yeah.
And we were in the old German barracks. Well, now, did you go through France and
all the way from Normandy.
From Normandy. So you were you part of the? Let's see, the D-Day landing.
Well,
was that,
I was there.
That?
I didn't get unloaded.
Uh-huh.
When I was I was in the headquarters company at that time when I went over, and so of course that's where all the officers are, and
yeah,
and they don't get out like the boys do.
Yeah.
And all the line companies, they went out the first day, right at start with, and so we didn't unload till the next day.
Well, there was terrible loss of life that first day, wasn't there?
Oh man, it was terrible.
Yeah. Well, so when did you go into the Army? What year did you go into the Army?
In the Army?
Yeah.
Golly, I don't remember. Seemed like it's 42 maybe, but I don't know. I wouldn't swear to it.
Did you join, or were you drafted?
Well, I was sort of drafted. I signed up in Catron County down there, and then I decided to come up home and hang around home a while for I knew I was going to have to go, and they got mixed up, and they called me from Catron County, and of course I didn't get the call.
Sure.
And so they finally they got it at Gallup, and that gal called me from Gallup, and she says she told me that they had me listed there with them now, and so she said, well, when would you like to go? And I said, well, I'll have to go whenever you say so.
That wasn't the most exciting thing on your list of stuff to do, was it?
And so she put me down, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. I was working out there at Wingate then. And so I took off from my job, and just a week, I guess, or so. And I took a trip to Mexico and come back by Jeffers, the old man I used to work for there, and then come on home. On the way home, I got Blue Water right out, about a mile out of Blue Water, and there was a Gallup Merck truck, delivery truck sitting out there, sitting out in them Malapies.
Yeah.
And the drive line was hanging, laying on the ground, one end of it. And I thought, what in the dickens is he doing out there? And I went up the roadway, and there was a car turned upside down on the road, and there's a woman laying there, her leg broke, and the 2 or 3 cars had stopped, and is there waiting for an ambulance. And so I went on a ways, and pretty soon there was another car turned over, and wasn't nobody hurt there. So I went on again, and there was old Mose Merivale.
No, never did.
He used to live there in Taru.
Uh-huh.
Well, he had an old Model T Ford truck, and it's just a rattle trap. and old Clifford, as his boy, he'd got his call too, and they'd operated an old floor spar mine up in the Zuni Mountains.
Yeah.
And he'd come in to go to the Army, I guess, and so he was driving up the road, and here come this Gallup Merck truck down, just flying down the road. And he said he whipped out just like he's going to run over him, and then when he got so close, he just pulled it out and kind of slammed on his brake, and there's a slab of ice. Well, there's about that wide, and it weighed about 200 pounds, I think. Well, that darn slab of ice shot out. The side door on that truck was open, and that slab of ice shot out there and hit the radiator on that old Model T, and it stopped right on top of his motor. It hit the firewall and stopped, and there it was, that big old chunk of ice on top of that motor. And he'd caught a ride on in, and I stopped and I looked at that. I couldn't imagine how in the world that happened.
So the guy in the Gallup Merck truck had just gone kind of berserk or something.
Yeah, it was one of them Pomeroys. Let's see, what was his name? It wasn't William. He was older than William. William he was the only sane one of the whole family, really sane. And this one, he was supposed to get his call and go to the next day too. And he just went berserk. The delivery guy had come up there with that truck and delivering ice around through there.
Okay.
And he just got in that truck and just took off.
well, I guess when they got him to the draft board, he had a crazy defense then, didn't he?
Well, he did. He sure did. I don't know whatever happened to him. I never seen him again.
Well, now, did you stay in until 45, till everything was all done?
Yeah, I stayed in until the armistice, even Japan. I'd have been on the next boat going to Japan if I hadn't dropped that atomic bomb.
Yeah. Yeah, the Japs figured out a real quick defense for that atomic bomb, didn't they?
Yeah, it didn't take them long. I got a tape on that. It sure is good. I really enjoy it.
Uh-huh. On the guys that dropped the bomb?
Hiroshima, they call the tape is called. And they dropped one on Hiroshima, and then the one on
Nagasaki.
That didn't stop them. Hiroshima. They thought this war guy, he said that they can only have one, and so they was going to fight on. Some of them wanted to give up them, but he couldn't do that. So, in fact, they was having a meeting at the time, and they was kind of arguing about it, and there's a few of them wanted to give up, but most of them didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so during that meeting, well, somebody come, a messenger come, and he said they dropped another bomb. And right there, it just fell apart.
Yeah. It got their attention.
All but 2 or 3 of them said, well, that's it, we've got to quit.
Yeah.
And this one, he didn't think they ought to. He said they couldn't have more than 2. So, but anyway, they outnumbered him, and he committed suicide, Harry Carey.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they had more than 2 at the time, did they?
Huh?
I say at the time, I don't believe they had more than 2.
Yeah. That was it.
Yeah.
But they knew how to make them.
They could have got another one together.
They could produce pretty fast.
Yeah, could have got another one together pretty quick. Well, Elton spent his time, I think he was the same thing, the Army Engineers, and he was in Fiji.
Who?
Elton.
Oh, yeah.
But he never would talk about it to us kids.
Oh?
He wouldn't, we'd try to talk to him about it, and he'd just kind of go off somewhere else. Now, he'd get a snoot full with old Hobo Jim and some of the hippies down there, and he'd tell them all about it.
Yeah.
But he never would talk to us about it. And then I guess Wallace, he was in the Marines, and I believe he was in Guadalcanal. And I know before he died, when he realized that his days were numbered, and he was on his way out, said he'd sit there and cry and say, I know I'm going to hell because I killed so many people. And of course, that ain't how it works, but,
No.
But I know he was really upset about that.
Yeah. Well, he was wounded, too.
Yeah.
I went to his funeral up here.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess he had a pretty rough time of it.
Yeah. All them people did.
Yeah,
Man, that was
Yeah.
Well, they had Normandy, every one of them islands that they went to.
Yeah.
And them Japs was dug in and just sitting there waiting for them. And
well, it was a horrible loss of life all the way around.
Yeah, they had to kill every one of them. You know, they didn't surrender.
No,
they had to kill every one of them.
Yep. Well, now, did Jerry Mitchell ever tell you about his little stint in the Army?
No.
Well, he never told me much about it. He said that they drafted him, and he didn't figure he ought to have to go. And he said he spent 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, in chains in a prison in California.
Oh.
And they finally decided that he wasn't going to change his mind, so they let him go. And
well, he had asthma, kind of bad.
Yeah. But he always was top contender for hard head,
Well, he'd have made a good soldier, a lot better than a lot of them that did go, I'll tell you.
Oh, heck of a deal.
He was pretty tough.
Well, you have one son. How many grandkids you got? You got 4 grandkids, right? Or 3, right? Eddie and Bryce?
3.
And Marcy.
5.
5 grandkids.
Well, 3 grand.
Yeah, 3 grandkids and then 5 great-grandkids.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if it's 200 years from now and my great-grandkids are watching this, what kind of good advice do you have for them?
You stay with it. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Yeah, that's what when I left that hospital down there, well, before I left, before we left the hospital, just a while after they come up there and released me,
Uh-huh.
well, another guy come up there. He's an Indian,
Yeah.
like from India,
Yeah.
and he told me, he said, now we got a process we do on people like you that they give up on here.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, we don't know how it does it or what it does, but we've got a 82% success rate on it. And he said, we've got one of them here in Albuquerque, and we're trying to get one in Farmington, but we can't find nobody to run the machine and the computer and all.
Uh-huh.
He said, as soon as we get one, we'll call you. And he said, we're full up here for 30 days and you may not live that long. So.
That's not something you wanted to hear, was
No.
it?
Well, I already figured it.
Yeah.
Because I knew it, I was in bad shape.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, 82%, that's better than they give me.
Sure. Sure.
So we got a hold of old D. Lovelady,
Okay. Yeah.
and asked him to kind of check into the rent business and one thing and another, and so I could get back and forth
Mm-hmm.
to the hospital and get something kind of close there. And we come on home, and Milton called Marcy that night in Fort Collins and told her how it was, so she got on the computer and got hunting that, and they found out they had one right there in Fort Collins. And so she's telling her roommates there, the 3 gals rented the house there together, and she's telling them about it. They're both nurses, and one of them says, we got that right here in our hospital. So she said, I'll check into it. So next night, what she told her was that they had an opening. And so Marcy got right on it and told them, and they said, well, if you can get him up here right away, well, he can have it. So she called down here, and right away, Milton's boss there in Farmington, that he runs them, works for on them cattle. Well, your dad does too. Or Jerry does.
Yeah,
I mean, Dick.
Yeah.
And so he told me, I said, well, I'll send our private jet up there and pick him up at 8 o'clock Wednesday morning. So I got ready to go. It took me about 3 days to pack. Had 2 suitcases. And so I was ready to go, and I decided I wouldn't go that morning. I just packed my suitcase out here, and I felt so bad. And so, then I sat down there and I took a couple of nitroglycerins and got to feeling a little better. And I thought, well, what's the difference? Die here in this chair or die up 2,000 feet in the air?
Yeah.
So Milton showed up pretty quick, and we took one on up to the airport, and sharp at 8 o'clock, well, that jet buzzed in over us and landed. And he pulled up there, and they filled him up with gas right quick.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in that, and in just an hour we was in Fort Collins. Didn't have to go through DIA, went straight to Fort Collins Airport. And Dorothy was up there and met us, and so we got in with her and went to the hospital. And we got there 30 minutes before our time, and we sat there until the doctor showed up. And he said, well, they said, everything's all right, all we need is your medical report. And Dorothy told him, says, well, I just called him this morning and need him up about it. They're supposed to send it 2 or 3 days ago. And said, I called them, and they said, well, I got it right here in front of me. He says, she says, I'll send it right now. So she did, and he got it right away, I guess. And it's all right. They accepted me.
Yeah. Now Milton's last time I was up here, why he was preaching part time at a church here.
He was what?
He was preaching part time at a church here.
Oh yeah, he preaches once in a while. Eddie does too.
Is it a Baptist church or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to church with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was raised a Mormon, how do you feel about the Mormon church?
Oh well, they're a good church. I just got started going to this one.
Yeah, well,
I like it fine.
Well, you know, going where your kids are going, that's pretty important. That's pretty important.
Well, just like that book I was just reading there, just finished it this morning.
Oh, this one here?
Yeah. That guy, he says that the main criteria is that you believe in Christ.
Yep.
And it don't matter what denomination you belong to, as long as you believe in Christ, well, that's what you're supposed to do.
That's right. Now I've got well, let's see. I'll tell you stories later. Anything else you want to say to posterity? This will go to all your kids and grandkids one of these days.
Well, I might tell you about when I was a kid in old Mexico.
Well, we'd like to hear that. I'd love to hear that. I visited those colonies down there one time, so I've been down there. Yeah. I've been down to Dublin and Juarez.
Where?
Colonia Dublin.
Dublin, yeah.
Colonia Juarez.
Yeah.
And then there's a third one down there, but I can't remember the name of it.
Well, there's Colonia Garcia. And Chupa.
Okay.
They're up in the Sierra Madre. Did you go up there?
No, I didn't. We just went to the two. Now, that Colonia Garcia, that was where your mother was born, wasn't it?
Well, I guess it is.
Yeah.
Her mother and 5 of her kids is buried right there in Garcia.
Okay. Now, because we had a Lewis move into our ward there in Missouri, and I took one look at him, and I can see the family resemblance. I know you're related to him. And so I was asking him, you know, if he'd done his genealogy and if he'd come across Chalk and Maudie or anything. Well, he hadn't. And so I was looking on the internet to try to get a little more information on your parents and where they came from and everything, and they had her listed, I believe, as listed as being born in Colonia Garcia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us about living down there.
Well, her mother and her lived in Colonia Garcia, and my granddad and his first wife lived in Horace.
Uh-huh.
And then Aunt Ludy, we called her, she lived in Chupa.
Okay.
That was about 80 miles from Juarez, and Dorothy was about halfway in between.
So Chupa was further south then, or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's right square in the tip tops of the Sierra Madre.
Okay.
And life went on sort of normal, I guess. About like it would anywhere.
Yeah.
My dad run a little store there all the time, and he had a few cattle and lots of horses. And then he was kind of hooked up with Bert Whitten. That's my mother's half brother. And they run hogs. I mean hogs.
Lots of them, huh?
Yeah, and they run them out on the range through the summer, and then they brought them in the fall and fattened them, and mostly made lard. That was lard was was the real thing there.
Yeah.
In them days, there wasn't no shortening.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they fed them darn hogs, some of them, till they couldn't even get up. And they butchered them every fall there. And so we lived in Chupa for, well, that's where we moved to when we first went down there. And I don't remember anything of, I don't know, about the first I remember down there was that we had a big old corral there, and my dad had a little old store there, and the people from Sonora brought their stuff out, like their wheat, corn, and that's mostly wheat and corn, on pack trains that come out there. There'd be 100 mules loaded with corn, or maybe both. And he had a pasture there. They could turn their horses loose, or their mules loose in there.
See, we ran out of tape.
Well, there we are. Come in, you just got here in time.
We ran out of tape just as you was telling me about the big mule trains of corn and grain coming into your dad's store in Mexico there.
Oh, well, they'd come in there and spend the night. And of course they traded a little. They didn't have no money, but they had things to trade.
Sure.
And so they'd stay all night and then load up the next day and head off down to Chico.
And you said the sacks were 200-pound sacks.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'll just pull this out.
Oh, that's all right.
Sally can get right in there.
Oh, well, all right.
I can get out from under it.
Well, I'll just put it on another thing.
Okay, and then you were telling me that you're starting to tell me where your dad got his fruit and stuff. And I think that's where we quit.
Well, he wanted to go down to Casa Grande, I think, to get his supplies. Anything but the corn and tobacco, he could get that up there closer than that. And they come in when they controlled it too. Tobacco did. And coffee, the same thing.
Well, now how much tobacco and coffee do you sell to them good Mormons in the colony there?
Well, there's lots of Mexicans there too. And they all smoked. And drank coffee too. Of course, that coffee was green beans.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, it's green beans. It wasn't even roasted yet. You had to roast it and then grind it. And of course, them Mexicans never had a coffee grinder. We had a coffee grinder. And they'd just put it in a container of some kind and grind it with a stick.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I sure enjoyed the time that I went down there looking around. You know, it's pretty country.
Well, it is.
I
It's
liked
a good
it down
country
there. Yeah.
too. It's a good country.
Yeah. And so what brought your dad back then? How come he decided to leave?
Well, mainly time just got so hard down there,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I started telling you about him and his son with them horses down.
Right.
We had to take them over at the Gavi line, they called it.
Uh-huh.
That's a little river out about 16, 18 miles from Garcia.
Okay.
And they had their hogs and horses and cows in there. Bert, Wetton, and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had about 30 or 40 head of horses we was going to take down there. And so me and Farrell and Ike, three of us, we took them down there, and on just before we got there, we met Ray and Elvin Wetton coming out. They was headed for town, and they had a quarter of deer with them they was bringing to town, and so we put it up in the tree, and they went on back with us to take the horses down there where we supposed to go. And we got down there, it was getting about noon, and one of them said, let's go down to old Monty's camp. That's an old boy that come down there on the lamb, and had taken up the bird. He was kind of old, and so they put him out there in this hog camp to look after the hogs. And so we went down to his camp and started to go in his tent, and that old Spike, a doggone old hound dog there, tied up to right there in the door, and Farrell started in there, and that old dog jumped, come out of that tent, took after him, and put him to flight. We decided we didn't want to eat there. And so one of them said, well, let's go swimming anyway. And this little old creek going down there, and they had a good hole right down below there, so we went down there, and everybody stripped off and got in the hole and started it was swimming, and I got my clothes off, but I didn't get in. I don't know how come. I just sitting on the bank there, and Ray, he come by me, and he says, hey, he says, he's got measles. And so, sure enough, I just broke out all over with him. So they said, well, we better get back to town.
Sure.
So we got out of there, got dressed, and took off. And I really didn't feel bad at all. I just doing all right. But every step that old horse got rougher. And the sun got hotter and brighter, and I started getting thirsty, and I thought I was going to choke to death. And so finally we made it to an old sawmill site that the boiler had blowed up and shut the mill down, so everything moved off. But they had a well there, a dug well, and so we made it to there, and boy, we got off, man, I drank water.
Really dehydrated.
Oh yeah, I was really thirsty. And I was pretty sick too by then. And so when we started leaving, I told him I ain't gonna ride that horse no more. He's just too rough. I'll walk. And it's about 2 or 3 miles to town yet. And he said, oh, you can't walk. And so old Ray said, well, put his old Foosty on behind me. He's riding a little old raw-boned buckskin mule. And They called him Clavel. And so they tied my foosty on behind his saddle and put me up in it. And he's a little old single footer. Boy, he's just as smooth as, just like getting in a Cadillac out of a dump truck. So I made it fine to town, and Aunt Lily, she come out and she took one look at me and she run back in the house and blacked out the windows and had a bed ready for me. And then that night, well, my brother Ralph, he's younger than me, he come down with him. And Ray, the guy that first noticed I had him, he come down with him. And she had 3 of us there, and I don't remember if there's any more or not. But anyway, she took care of us there for 2 or 3 days until my folks got back.
Measles was a pretty dangerous thing to have in those days.
Well, I guess so. I didn't die, but I sure thought I was going to before I got to that well.
Well, now, when did Ralph pass away?
When what?
When did Ralph die?
Golly, I really don't remember. It was
I remember going to visit him and Betty at the White Elephant.
Yeah.
When they had the White Elephant there. And
well, it's after that, quite a while after that, because he built a storage outfit of his own.
Okay.
And but I don't remember what year it was. It was in the 60s sometime. He was pretty young yet.
Yeah, yeah, he was. Have you kept track of his kids at all?
Well, his daughter lived here in town for a while. Maybe she still does, I don't know.
I don't know.
But she's married to some coop that he just didn't want nobody messing around his outfit. And so we didn't get to see much of her. And I don't know what's happened to them. I haven't seen anything of either one of them for quite a while.
No. Haven't heard a thing.
Huh?
Haven't heard anything about them at all.
I haven't either. Hazel, when he was here, he tried to call her and get in touch with her, but couldn't find her.
Yeah.
And then old Rick and Fred, I don't know what, for Fred, Rick, he just flew the coop. He got to where he looked just like a nigger. And
now, I think they just had the 2. When I remember, they had Freddie and Fela Sue.
well, then they adopted Rick after that.
I didn't know him.
And then they adopted another. Let's see, what was his name? I can't remember, but he fell out of the storage outfit, I think, there in Gallup, some way. He was a real good kid.
Yeah.
He's a white kid.
Betty still alive, do you know?
Oh no, she died several years ago. She got to be a worst alcoholic
Oh dear.
that ever lived.
Yeah.
And he took care of her. He stayed there and took care of her. She'd get her a bottle and go to bed and just lay there and just wake up and take a drink and go back to sleep.
Yeah. That's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the interview.
Give the
And
date.
yeah, it's December the 6th, 2007. And Cortez, Colorado. And I spent a lot of time with you. And I've learned a lot of things from you, and I appreciate all that.
Well, you didn't learn much.
Oh, you'd be surprised. You'd just be surprised. So we'll appreciate it and love you.
Bilge.
Well, this is my cousin, Deana Kirk Whitmer, and it's December the 6th, 2007.
No, it is not. It's December the 7th.
Well, day one way or the other at our age doesn't count.
With me it does.
When were you born and where?
I was born on the 27th of April in Gallup, New Mexico, 1939.
1939.
My folks were living at, Dad was working at the Standing Rock Trading Post. Mother went in and stayed with Grandma when, or maybe it was your mother, I don't know.
Now, where is Standing Rock?
Well, Standing Rock is probably about 10, 15 miles west of Crown Point.
Okay.
On that, I can't remember the name of that highway,
Yeah.
the number of that
Yeah, I
highway
know.
that goes out. It goes on out and hits the main
Yeah.
highway there. They worked there for a while. Then they I guess they went back to the Chaco because they had me there for a long
Well,
time,
that's,
quite a while.
I had always been under the impression that they were living at the Chaco when you
Well,
were
they
born.
went back to the Chaco after that. After I was born, and
Yeah.
how they managed that. Here they are with this, and I'm not complaining because but here mother is with this baby who has a handicap. I can't even nurse.
Yeah.
Here she is out there on that Chaco wash. She has no water. She has no electricity. She doesn't even have a door on her. The window. They had gunny sack. Dad in his stories, he said, well, I had built a cabinet out of orange crates, and we had it fixed up pretty nice. The floor was dirt. The roof was dirt. They hauled their water from the Chaco.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have a car.
Yeah.
They had to go horseback.
Now, was he running a trading post or?
No,
Yeah.
they had cattle out there.
Okay.
And I think I sent you the story about the old sergeant put out a contract on him, and somebody took a shot at him. And after
Well,
that, my mother said, "Okay, that's enough. We're out of here."
I've saved all of the stories you sent, but I don't recall that one.
Well, I'll have to look and see.
Yeah.
Of course, if I ever get my internet. But anyway, from there they moved on to the ranch and then into Peru.
Uh-huh.
And I started school there in Peru went to the 7th grade, and then we went to Hot Springs. Dad and Joneses went in together on that place down there at Hot Springs, Caballo. Went to high school there and then come back to, I never did adjust. I hated it there. The people were great.
At Hot Springs?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I just never adjusted.
Well, I spent one summer down there after you had left home, I guess. And one of the most humiliating experiences in my entire life. Carol and I were down at the minnow pond in the summertime, and we'd gone down there barefoot.
Yeah.
And your mom called us for lunch, and I stepped out of that minnow pond onto those hot cobblestones, and boy, did I start to holler and dance.
And Carol went tripping off.
Yeah, and I tried to get on up there, and I couldn't. I had to get back off of those cobblestones and back in the mud.
Yeah.
And so she walked up barefoot, got my shoes, wore them down, handed them to me, and walked back up barefoot again.
She could just go anywhere. Yeah, and then when I first started school, I had to climb out of that canyon. I had to go up that canyon and catch a bus on that Hillsborough Highway. And it was probably 2 miles to the top of that.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was 2 miles, probably wasn't. But by the time you got there, you were sweaty and dirty, and but now you wouldn't dare do that.
No.
You wouldn't dare do that. But I'd hide in the greasewood.
If you hurt someone?
Yeah, if I saw a car coming or something, and then later years they got a car going down the canyon that I rode. But as soon as I got out of high school, boy, I come back as fast as I could. Every summer, if they'd let me, I'd come back up to the ranch. I wouldn't stay there at all.
Well, now, I remember spending lots of summers at the ranch, but I don't particularly remember you being there.
I remember you being there. You just don't remember.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Of course, I didn't get to stay there for a whole long time.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me stay for a long, all summer.
Yeah.
A couple of 3 weeks, you know, maybe a month, and
Uh-huh.
then I had to come home,
Uh-huh.
go home. But as soon as, you know, when I started business school there in Albuquerque, and Eileen got
Yeah.
pregnant, was going to quit, and I took her job,
Yeah.
I never went back.
Hmm.
I went back a couple of times, you know, but I nearly died the last time I went. It was so hot down there, you know.
Well, now, didn't you work for Mother at the cafe in
I
Ganado?
did. That was where
I knew you and Eileen were there together a lot, but I couldn't remember
Yeah, I
for
was
sure
working
if you
there,
were
and
working
in
there.
fact, I stayed with you guys, and,
Yeah.
and that's where I got converted to the
Mhm.
gospel,
Hmm.
or not necessarily converted because I was already,
Yeah. Wasn't a big jump for you.
no, because Dad had already basically taught me, you know, they weren't supposed to try to sway us one way or the other, but he'd come in from the store and sit and read the Book of Mormon, you know. Hey, listen to this, guys! You know, and it was there. You know.
Sure.
So when I heard it, I joined. Yeah, I was baptized before I left that summer and went back. That's when I went back then and went to business school, and then I come back.
And Eileen was ready to be baptized too. And Jim Jacobs sat there and talked her into waiting.
I thought she was baptized at the same time.
Nope. Nope, she was ready. She had a testimony. And then she and Jim
Yeah.
got together or got engaged
he
or fell
was-
in love or whatever.
He was baptized. Jim was.
Jim, yeah. Yeah, Jim was eventually. And but-
he just didn't get his
no,
testimony strong
no, he
enough.
never
But
never
anyway,
really got it together.
I worked there in Crown Point for 10 years,
Yeah.
and then when Jim sold the ranch, why we moved to Arizona. That's
You,
where my life fell apart. I quit paying my tithing.
Yep.
And I'm not kidding you. When I quit paying, I can tell you the exact date.
Yep.
When I quit paying my tithing,
Everything.
boy, I mean everything just went down the drain.
Well, it was about that time you had your famous Mexican adventure, wasn't it?
No, that was after I come back up here.
Oh, okay.
And, then Jim and Marguerite sitting up there with a ticket, plane ticket. I could go to Alaska and go to work up there. I had a job, and I was told no. And the next week I met him.
Yeah. Yeah.
We went maybe.
At least you were listening. That's
yeah,
good.
boy, I tell you what, I learned to listen
Yes.
because I was told not to do that, and I didn't listen.
Okay, what's the date? At least what was the year
Of
that you met Milford?
Well, we got married in 76, so it would have been 75 probably. Well, could have been. It was the spring of 76 because we didn't go together. We went together maybe a month, and he wasn't eligible to go to the temple. He hadn't been going to church or paying his tithing or anything, and so I at first said I wouldn't marry him until he could take me to the temple. Well, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, okay, maybe not. So anyway,
Let's work with this guy here a little bit, huh?
yeah. So anyway, we went ahead and got married, and so then exactly a year later we went to the temple, and then exactly a year later than that we got to take Glenda and have her sealed. And of course the first marriage didn't work.
Right.
So he took off, you know, and then for a while after we got married, well, he'd come and took her, you know, and would pay his child support, but then he fell behind again as soon as he did. Well, I nailed him, but
Yeah.
and it was better for her because it just doesn't work that way,
Yep.
you know, where you're.
Well, you know, we've got one that's divorced now, and the kids go to spend every weekend with their father, and the rest of the time they're with Crystal and her husband, and you know, it'd be so much better off
Oh, yeah.
if their dad was out of the picture.
Well, he's her dad,
Yep.
and so anyway, she was three and a half, I think, when we got married. But as far as she was concerned, why, that was it. First time he had to go off on a job and be gone overnight, oh, I could not console that child. She cried and cried. Oh, he's not ever coming back. And he called.
Yeah.
Somebody had shot a hole in a pipeline down at around Cuba somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And he's not ever coming back. So he called that night and he talked to her. And after he talked to her, she was
She was okay, yeah.
But it was pretty traumatic for her,
Yeah.
you know, when that first happened. But anyway, she got to be, when we took her to the temple, why she said, I'm finally a family.
Mhm.
I finally have a family.
Mhm.
So she knew.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I was 4.5, I guess, when Mother and
Yeah.
Elton got
Yeah.
married. And I'm sure glad there wasn't any of this back and forth junk.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, I had a good relationship with Jerry Mitchell until he died, and I'd go to see him periodically and stuff, but it was kind of when it was everybody's choice.
Right.
And everybody kind of had to agree, you know, and there
Right.
was none of this
Well,
tug
you're
and
gonna-
push and pull, and yeah.
Well, see, I think, I never did know for sure, but I think that
We got company.
they tried to,
Yeah, Milton's coming.
I think they tried to take her, they got some casing down it. And Dad said, you know, signed the papers and everything, said he would take responsibility, so they left the casing and everything in there. So, and then he had somewhere or another got, you know, soil
Yeah.
conservation or something, got some tanks built. He got a big one there at the corner, and then another one off over almost to the fence over there. He had one built over there, and that water run from that tank to the other one and then clear down through there.
I'll be darned.
And you could see exactly where the water ran because the grass was.
Yep,
so
grass was
really-
all
But I do
dead.
recall that there was some residue left on the
Well, you know,
in all respect to Sally's comment, there must have been something a little bit bad about it because I do remember that.
well, it had all the
Turned
alkali in
the
it.
ranch, it turned the ground black.
Yeah, and I remember you remember where the asparagus bed was out behind the house? Well, there was a fence there.
Yeah.
And then on beyond that fence, there were at least 4 areas there where they had tried to grow a
Yeah.
garden.
And the first year.
At
or
first
so
year,
would-
they did
yeah.
real good, and the second year, it was
Well, you know, down below
pretty bad. And
the little tank there, which was east of the house,
Yeah.
they, Granddaddy with his little Johnny Popper tractor, he tried to grow corn,
Mm-hmm.
and never did. It wouldn't grow.
Was it the water or the soil?
Yeah.
It was the water.
I
Every
think it
time
was the
that
water
water run
because
on anything,
the
it
only
would kill it.
place, the only place that you would see that is where that water ran.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming the other soil was all right.
yeah, I think the soil was good. Well, Grandma and Marguerite grew quite a garden there
Yes.
every year, but they had the barrels that they caught the rainwater off the roof, and that's what they watered the garden
The
with.
only thing that would grow. Oh, I can remember that. You have to eat your asparagus. And I'd swallow it whole because I thought it was so nasty. And now I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Well, I liked the asparagus, but I didn't particularly care for having to go cut it every day.
Well, I didn't mind that, but I just didn't like to eat it. And I'd swallow it whole because I thought it was the nastiest stuff. But now I like it, you know.
Well, the only thing I really remember resenting out at the ranch was having to go pick currants.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I hated that.
I hated
Oh,
picking
my.
currants.
They were small,
Yeah,
you know, and Grandmama make us go out and pick them currants, you know.
I like the jelly though.
Yeah.
That
the jelly
all
was
right.
good.
Do you remember the cooler box on the north side of the
Mhm.
kitchen there?
Mhm.
You know, they keep
And
that.
screened over. And
yeah,
Yeah, and they kept that gunny sack on there to keep that milk and butter
Yeah.
cool, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I can still remember
And
when
that's
they had that
relative.
little over just north of the rock house. They had a little shed
Yeah.
built there
Little
out of
milk
slats.
shed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Green
screened.
in, yeah.
And they had gunny sacks
Mhm.
on there, and they
Uh-huh.
would wet them down all
Yeah.
the time, and the whole thing was cool.
Right.
I don't know how cool.
They had
it seemed-
2 of them, but I guess one of them pretty well had already deteriorated by the time we got.
well, I remember the 2 of them that they had there, but I never knew what they were for
Uh-huh.
because I don't think they ever. Well, they had
That butane refrigerator.
yeah, they had the butane refrigerator, and then they put in that
Light
big
plant.
old diesel light plant.
Yeah,
Oh,
see, that was after I'd left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he already-
I'd heard
Yeah.
about it, but I
Yeah.
never.
that was a pain in the you-know-what.
Yep.
Oh,
Well,
my
you had
gosh.
electricity when you guys had it.
No.
No.
Well, we did later, yeah. We had the light plant when Dad and Mother
Yeah.
moved there. And Dad worked and worked and got that electricity. And it was in 58 or so when we got it, before we got it, because it was late. And when he got it, why, they put it into all those boarding schools out through there, you know. Torreon and Pueblo Pintado and all those places out there. And it was Hamas Electric out of Espanola.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's a long ways.
Yeah.
Well, Milton, do you remember the time that the lightning struck the phone and blew it up? Were you there then?
I don't
I was.
really blew it up.
Yeah, I was sitting beside the phone.
Mhm.
You know, the phone was, well, they'd gotten a regular phone by then. It wasn't the old hand crank phone, but it was still at the same place there, and they had it on a little side table. And I was sitting there, and it started a little bit of a lightning storm, and I heard just a real crackle, you know, and I saw this ball of fire come from the telephone line down the house, and the phone literally blew up into pieces.
No, I wasn't there. No.
I think Jerry Lee Lewis wrote a song about that.
Well, great balls of fire, yeah.
Right down the phone line. No, in fact, I really can't remember any phone except the old
The old hand
phone.
crank, yeah.
Everybody
you didn't
had.
answer if it was a long and a two shorts
Yeah.
or whatever it was. That was when you answered. And somebody always.
Well, that's the one where you actually said hello. You always picked up the receiver whenever it rang, but you only said hello.
It was your ring.
Yes.
That's what we had in Sylvania.
Well, do you remember the time you pulled the saddle off my horse and made me pack my saddle back from off north of the ranch
No,
there?
that wasn't me.
Yeah.
You're remembering somebody else.
No.
I think
Now,
that was Gary.
Don't start pulling a Gary Presley on me now.
Why? What was the occasion?
Well, Naomi's little sister Gail was out there.
Oh
And-
dear.
Yeah, and
Here goes the Gale story.
yeah, she and I were just madly in love, you know, at about the ripe old age of 12.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd saddled up a horse, and she and I were going to go horseback riding double.
Uh-huh.
And we rode north, down past, there was where I burned the railroad ties up.
I remember that.
And then a little
With these
further
fireworks.
that I made from tearing apart a box of 30-06 shells of Grandpa's. And then a little further than that, why there was the road kind of went around a little rock shelf there. And so we stopped and got off just to
Oh, I do too.
sit and talk and
We almost
whatnot, you
turned
know.
into the
And
garbage can a while ago.
we weren't paying attention, and a jackrabbit come out and spooked the horse. Well, he ran off about 100 yards or something, and you were out there. I think you were on another horse, and you just went over there and took the saddle and blanket off and the bridle off and dropped it in the ground there, and came back and said, if you can't pay enough attention to your horse to take care of him, then you don't deserve to have
Well,
one.
that wasn't me. I wouldn't do something like that.
And I had to pack the saddle all the way back to the house.
Oh, dear me.
He's ringing.
Hello.
Well, do you remember?
We're down here at Deana's, and I'm taping old time stories between Deana and Milton and I.
With him. Oh, we, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Hello?
Um,
Yeah.
Gary had this bobcat. I think it was a bobcat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tied
Oh.
it on the back of his saddle on old Scotty.
Well, we're at
I told
Deana's,
Milton that,
and
that
Deana and Milton and I
found a lamb.
are reminiscing, and I'm taping most of
And
it.
Milton said, "Oh," and he reached up and grabbed
So,
that bobcat.
I'll talk to you later.
Then they scared it with.
Okay, I'll call you when we get done.
Yeah.
Bye.
That's where he picked up his nasty habits of scaring kids with the bear hides.
Well,
And somebody else he could.
Yeah.
now I remember when you guys still lived up at the farm, and I remember you were wearing, seemed like you're always wearing coveralls, gray coveralls with little stripes on them, and we called you Milton.
Yeah,
Milton.
yeah.
You know
Milton.
Joyce Perry Atkinson?
Hmm?
I said something about Milton. You mean Milton?
Yeah,
And
and
I,
I'll have to
oh,
remember that.
Yeah, I've forgotten all about that.
and you know he was out there like a shining light to me. I wanted to be just like Milton when I got grown like he was.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of got over that when you threw my saddle on the ground.
Yeah, I would think that would tarnish a guy's image, especially in front of his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's the thing. And if it'd been just me, it'd been all right. But here I was embarrassed in front of my
carry it
girlfriend.
You're serious?
Yes, I am.
I do
Yep.
not remember that. I really
You
do
know-
not remember that.
Carol will say, well, do you remember such and such? And I do not remember. But then I can turn around and say, well, what about
Yeah, such a.
such and such? And she'll say,
Mhm.
I don't remember that happening.
Memory is a funny thing, you know.
Well, I
Yeah.
think we were all here at this house one time, but it was when the kids were with us. Got to remembering stories of trip to Alaska and all this, and the different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Well,
what
that's
was
the whole thing.
important to you.
You know,
at the
somebody
time.
can tell a story, and then somebody else will say, well, that's not the way
Yeah.
it happened.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's
Well, that's the
all-
way I am with this saddle thing.
Yeah.
That's not the way that
Well,
happened.
see.
But I could, if I did that, I could understand why you would remember it.
Well, I also remember the time that when I went on your honeymoon with you going to Alaska. I don't think poor Dorothy's ever forgiven me for that.
For the whole trip, you mean?
Yeah.
Right. I haven't forgiven anybody for that.
No, I've borne the brunt of that for a long time.
But
The bad
anyway,
thing of it is, she'll meet a perfect stranger, and within 5 minutes, you want to hear about my honeymoon?
48 and a half years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Well,
we were
shit,
both
that
smoking
was
Bull
a plain
Durham,
old milk toast honeymoon.
and your sack got
Forgotten it by
Yeah.
now.
down a little lower than
Been
mine.
blessed.
Yeah.
And so you broke up a couple of moose turds in my in your Bull Durham sack, and then you switched with me.
Jerry thought he was getting a good deal because you're starting more in it.
And the sad part of the deal was I had about half of it smoked before I realized that there was a difference.
Well, that tells you something about the quality of Bull Durham.
Yes, it does.
I remember going across Cook Inlet to the Clam Beach.
Yeah,
And we were in the Beaver
yeah,
Power Scow.
Yeah.
And I'd gone up to the wheelhouse and was sitting there, and
Martin
Martin Cooper?
yeah.
And I was sitting there, and I rolled a cigarette, and I was sitting behind him, you know, and I rolled me a cigarette, real important, like, you know, and lit that up, and all of a sudden Martin comes unwound. He says
Who's got
to
a
the
fire?
deckhand, he says, "I think we got a fire. Run down and check the engine room, quick." He said, "I smell rope burning."
And then he turned around and started out and he saw Milton and said, oh, never mind.
And so my dashing, glamorous image kind of got tarnished in everybody's eyes, especially mine. You know, I had to put the stinking thing out.
Well, now I got to tell a story on Dorothy.
I didn't do anything.
Yes, you did. I think it was before we went to Alaska.
I don't
But
have any memory of that.
That history
I
was
have
pretty
black-
slow.
it was either that or very shortly thereafter. But we were having supper, and Laureen had made some chili, and we were all sitting there eating it. And Elvin said, "Boy," he said, "that stuff's going to put hair on your chest." And Dorothy, just her eyes got big, and she looked down.
Elvin wasn't with us though.
That had to have been after we was in Alaska.
It must have been, yeah,
They'd already
yeah,
left
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they leave before you got married? Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Gone about a month before, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I didn't remember exactly when you had gotten married. I knew it was
Right
wasn't
after,
very long.
right out of school.
Yeah.
And that would have been the end.
End of May.
End of May,
to the
yeah.
End of
Yeah,
May.
yeah.
Because we got married 6th of June, so
Yeah.
it was just
yeah.
a week or so after school was up.
And
So
then
what are you gonna do fantastic for your honeymoon? I mean, your anniversary, 50th.
Your
wedding
50th to
anniversary.
wipe out.
Nothing, I hope.
We don't know if we're going to make it or not. That's still another year or so away.
I'll be
They
glad.
say this marriage isn't gonna last.
Oh.
Yeah, the coyote woman told us that.
oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
Virginia
Oh, yeah.
Resch,
Yeah,
do you remember?
yeah, I remember her.
Yeah.
She told you it wasn't going to last.
Oh,
huh?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How come? You were too young or what? Well, you know, Gary's and Elma's wasn't ever going to last either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
we
now-
won't make it to our 50th just because we're too dang old now. We're working on it.
Well, this
How
next
many
year
years,
will
Tina?
be the 49th.
Yep. Yep.
We've got 30, we're coming up on 32.
Hmm.
April will be finishing 39 years.
Yeah.
Look
Isn't
out.
that just blow your mind?
Yeah, it does.
You know,
It does.
we
folks
used to
just
be
did
the younger
64.
generation. We were the kids.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, we're not, we're not close anymore.
Well, I tell everybody, I said, you know, people make such a big to-do about growing old, but really I've done it without even trying. It's
There you
easy.
go.
Yeah. Yeah, all of a sudden you wake up and you're old.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you another story about these selective memories and stuff. When I was interviewing Gary, there were 2 or 3 things that I remember and know to be true, and Gary swore up and down didn't happen. One
Well,
of
I'm
them.
beginning to question your
Well-
story.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
one.
because you've got it
one
up
of them-
there,
I'm
it
starting to side
doesn't
with Gary a little bit on this.
Well, one of them, when he and Naoma got married, they ran off to Winslow and got married. And they told me that afternoon before they left, said, we're going to Winslow for the weekend, and we won't be back tonight, and tell Mom and Dad that we're okay, you know, but then it said, but don't tell them until tonight, till after supper. And so I was,
Send out the posse.
I was entrusted with this mighty great honor of knowledge, you know. And Gary said, oh no, that never happened. He said, we got married up in Farmington and Mom and Dad stood up with us.
Oh, no.
So you know,
Yeah.
and then the other one, and this is really the
And
funny
he
one.
really believed that, huh?
Well, I don't know whether he did or not.
Well, he must.
He
have.
must have. Or he
No, I don't think so, because,
Well, they dang sure run off and got married.
Yes.
well, I was talking to Keith a couple days later and telling him that, and Keith said, what? He said, they never got married in Farmington. We know better than that. But then I was also telling him that I remembered when I was 3.5 years old, and we were living there with Presley's in town. My mother was working at the telephone office.
Yeah.
It was after she and Jerry had got divorced.
Yeah.
And
I remember that day very well.
and
Just like it was yesterday. And she worked at the phone company. That was back in the days where the phone operators,
Yep.
you picked up the phone and
they said, number please.
number please.
Let
And,
him tell the story.
okay.
Well, that's all right.
All
It's,
right.
it's all part of the same
But
story,
anyhow,
kind of.
that shows how far technology has
Yes.
come since that
Yes.
time. You know,
Shows how good your memory is.
they connected
Yep.
you and they listened to every
Yeah.
conversation they
Everything you
wanted to.
Mother still tells tales about listening to the colored folks talk to each other and call each other nigger all the time.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, it was in the afternoon, maybe early evening, and you know, there were those bedrooms down in the basement there, and they had the bunk beds in that one room and a concrete floor. And Gary had a girl up on one of those bunks, and I climbed up there to see what was going on. And he reached out with his foot and pushed the ladder off, and I fell down and broke my arm on the concrete.
That's how you.
Well,
I heard you fell off the bunk bed, but I didn't remember that you had.
and so I was
Did he
telling that
stay
with
in a
Gary, you know, and
bathroom?
Gary said absolutely not. He says no way, that never happened. I never had a girl up on one of those bunk beds. And so a day or so later, while I'm doing a taping with Virginia, and after I got done taping our conversation for about an hour, why I told her, I said, do you remember when I broke my arm? She says, oh yeah. And I said, well, what I remember is, and I related the story, and I said, Gary says that that's absolutely incorrect. And she kind of ducked her head a little bit, and she said, well, yes. She says, that's exactly what happened. And she said, I was babysitting you. And she said, I was supposed to be in charge. And she said, I knew Gary was up to something, but I didn't really understand what. And she said, now that part I'm not too sure about. But anyway, she said that then when I broke my arm, she knew that it happened on her watch, and she was supposed to be babysitting, And she was probably not only going to get in trouble for my broken arm, but she was going to get in trouble for not straightening Gary out too.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you know, she said, you were my baby. She said, I watched all that time. She says, I just sat and cried and cried and cried because you got your arm broken on my watch. She says, but yes, that's exactly how it happened.
Well, that wasn't widely publicized because I.
But here's another thing that to illustrate here. Remember the old John Deere LA tractor that Granddaddy had down there in the tractor shed?
Yeah.
Well, I emailed Gary, well, do you remember the tractor?
Yeah, I got an email on it too.
Well, he sent back that it was a Cub. What are they? International Cub?
No.
And I was just bowled over. I couldn't believe it. That he would think that because I can I vividly remember us going down there playing on that tractor.
Well, it was. Was it a 2-cylinder? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have.
LAs have a round.
I have really.
Flywheel.
Yeah.
I have really vague memories that there was a tractor out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I that's all I remember.
He said yes, it was a John Deere LA. I have a picture, not of it, but of what it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It definitely was.
And
I remember that.
I don't know what they sold it. I don't know what they did with it, but
it had about the same horsepower as a Cub, which is next to nothing. But
your dad said it was just a 2 horsepower. Just a little old bitty garden tractor, really.
Well, you rode on it though.
Yeah.
And
walking.
he tried to farm. He plowed that up down there at the corner. He raised a corn crop down there one year. Cows kept getting that, but. He raised corn with it, and it definitely
Gary thought it was a
Cub. Yeah.
No,
Well, Gary's getting forgetful, I guess.
Well, something's going on. I don't know what.
Well, it's just like we're saying. Everybody has a different twist on your
Yeah,
memory of,
yeah.
of things so distant.
Well, and I'll talk with David and Andy about the trip to Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember being near as mean to them as they claim I was. But I was smoking, and Mother didn't know about it, and I was trying to keep it kind of under the QT. Of course, Milton and Dorothy knew because I was riding in the cab with them, and we had.
Talking
Go ahead.
about that, I hate to interrupt, but I'll forget if I don't. I remember one time you'd fallen asleep over there and you had your mouth open, and so I took some bull dirt and reached over there and filled your mouth. So you weren't the only ornery one on that trip.
But we had
survived, I don't know.
we had that old Ford pickup full of stuff. It was Gary's pickup,
Yes,
I
it
think.
was.
And then it had a camper shell on it, and we had had the bed full of stuff we were hauling up there, and then had a couple of mattresses on top of that, and Tony and David and Andy had to ride back there.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know,
can't believe they entrusted them to me driving.
who knows?
That was the most irresponsible thing. I've thought of that later. A 17-year-old kid driving all the way to Alaska.
But there was a sliding back window there, and they'd open up the window to say something. Well, I didn't want them catching me smoking, and so I'd shut that window, get it shut right now, and we'd stop for gas or something, and here these little kids are, let us out, please let us out. No, we're just going to get some gas and we're going to be right back on the road again. Just stay in there.
I'm gonna go.
Let us out.
You went yesterday.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh my. And flat tires. Flat tires all over the place. And of course that was before tubeless tires and inflate-a-flat and this kind of stuff. And
Well, finally, somewhere along the trip, a wheel bearing came off of that
yeah,
trailer.
yeah.
And I think that was in Canada.
Yes, it was.
Had to shop around and finally found another one and bought another one.
Well, and then didn't the pickup finally break down?
Yeah, it broke down just inside of Alaska.
Yeah, and they had to, and so we went on in the car. And loaded everybody in the car, left you and Dorothy with the With you guys had a honeymoon. Come on, get off.
Oh,
Stayed
my
with
mother
us.
was there.
Oh, was she okay?
She had to stay and cook, or we would have started it.
But I remember we went on and found the guys out on the North Fork Road there, and then they went back to.
Yeah, they
To
went to
pick
a
you up.
junkyard in Anchorage
Yeah.
and got another bell
Yeah.
housing, I think it was,
Yeah.
rear end for that pickup. And
And here came Elvin then. He came.
Yeah,
to-
yeah. Elvin came back.
So then, you know, we had the two pickups. And then when we got down on the Kenai, well, we'd stop for the night, and Milton's folks stayed in the tent, and they tied it to the front bumper of the pickup. And Elton and Jimmy and
Gary,
drove up that morning.
Uh-huh.
We,
I don't know how they knew we were there, but anyhow,
well, I woke up and there was somebody in the cab of the pickup.
that started the pickup.
Started the pickup, and I'm just in a panic. And Milton said, "Don't worry, it's just my uncle." Well, he backed up just enough to collapse the tent.
They thought
Thought you were in the tent. Yeah, yeah.
They were going to welcome her into the
And I
family.
have always wished that I had done what I had planned to do or thought about
Yeah.
doing.
Later, yeah.
Anyway, I told Milton, I said, I should put a pillow under your
Yeah,
jacket because I always wore his jacket.
sure.
And he said, yeah, go ahead and do that. Well, I didn't because I knew his mother would die. And his dad would have just, croaked right there. But it would have been funnier than heck. 'Cause-
Just to see the look on their
yeah,
face.
because
when we-
Elton was popping off, oh, I thought you were going to be a redhead. Oh, but that would have been too funny. Had I gone through looking 9 months pregnant, that would have been.
You know that was an adventure.
Oh, man.
It
That was an
You
adventure.
guys,
Like,
I envied you always because of it. I really did.
well, it had its drawbacks.
From the other side of the perspective,
Yeah.
it was,
Well,
like I said, I've had to live with that honeymoon story all my life.
But I've forgotten most of it.
Well, tonight it's going to be bad because it's refreshed.
I'm sorry.
I remember how bad the mosquitoes were in Canada.
Yeah.
We got into Canada. If I could have gone home, I would have.
Yeah.
Boy, that one night.
Well, and we went through miles and miles and miles of forest fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And when it wasn't the fire, it was
Just the
those old
same.
scraggly trees.
Yeah.
1 mile
Yeah.
looked like the next
Yeah.
to like the last. It was
Yeah.
just
well, is it flat? Up through
certain areas of it
Yeah.
was monotonously flat with scraggly old.
Little bottle washer
Somewhere you were
trees.
nowhere.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when you got somewhere, you weren't anywhere.
No.
And I can remember Naoma, of course, was so much older than we were.
Yeah.
She was 4 years older. She was all of 21.
Yeah, she was 21.
But she had 2 children and she knew it all.
Yes, she did.
She would get so mad because Milton wouldn't drive fast enough.
Oh, sorry.
And he would start driving faster and that trailer would start whipping
Yeah.
back and forth. So one time she just said, well, I'm going to just drive. You
Yeah.
can't keep up, so I'm going to drive. So we got in the car. And, of course, Virginia just took off like a hurricane. And pretty soon we noticed that Naoma wasn't behind us. So she finally got up there a ways and she said, well, we better stop and wait on her. Oh my goodness, the steam was just rising. Why didn't you tell me that the trailer whipped? We almost
Why didn't you listen?
Yes, I told her and I told her, but she had to experience
Yep.
it before she
Yeah.
realized that darn thing had whipped.
Well, and then after we went on in, I don't know why I wrote. I guess we just loaded everybody in the car. Yeah, and it was loaded,
Yeah,
and still pulling a trailer.
yeah.
And we got into Alaska, and there were all those frost
Yeah.
heaves on the road there, just
Yeah.
terrible frost heaves. And of course, we'd never experienced anything like that down here. And she'd be running down the road and hit one of those frost heaves, and that trailer hit you, dig in,
Oh,
and just about throw us. And she'd slow down for about 4 or 5 miles, and then pretty soon it'd creep up again, and whoom!
Oh, it's a miracle we all made it up there.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
I wonder, does anybody remember how long it took us?
The story I've heard was forever.
I'm thinking 3 weeks.
After you hit
Yeah.
the Canadian border.
Well, I do remember that,
Couple of days.
it was a long time getting to Canada.
Yes, yes.
And I remember how hot it was going up through Utah and there's a geyser there somewhere, and we stopped at that geyser that's,
Well, that's just out of Green River, I think.
yeah, I think so, but
One at Woodside.
yeah, but it was
That
so
time
hot,
The road went on the west side of that guy.
I don't remember that.
and there was, of course, there wasn't such thing as air conditioning in a car
no.
then. And so we had the windows rolled down, you know, and we're just hotter than anything. And we got to Canada, and I think it took us 3 days to get to Canada.
Yeah, that sounds
And
about
I
right.
thought, well, we're in Canada. We're almost there.
Yeah. But we came through Cortez on our
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
came
we
right
did.
through
Yeah,
Cortez,
right through
and I
Cortez and
could-
up through Moab.
Yeah, I can, for some reason I can remember that.
Yeah.
And Cortez was nothing. It was just a,
Yeah, there wasn't
Just a
hardly
bump in
anything
the
there.
road.
Well, when you stop and think about it, the highway doesn't really go
that's
through
right,
Cortez.
even yet.
Yeah.
The one that goes through just
Yeah.
skims the edge of town.
Yeah.
But that's about right. Seems like about 3
We
days to
stopped,
Canada.
we stopped and spent the one night in a motel, the second night. And that was in, what's the town just north of Salt Lake?
Logan?
Still in Utah?
Yeah,
Logan?
Yeah, probably.
That
it
could-
must have been.
Brigham City?
No,
It must have been.
where's the IRS headquarters?
Ogden.
Ogden.
Ogden. It was
Ogden.
Ogden.
Yep.
Yep.
It was in Ogden.
Yeah.
How would you know that?
I
Sally?
How many kids had to stay in the hotel room?
Just Jerry.
I did. Surely I
We
didn't.
were blessed with Jerry.
Surely I didn't.
He got even with me for the saddle deal he's talking about. I was saddled with him the whole time.
Well, I'm sure sorry about that. I mean, you'd think I could have at least slept in the car seat the
can't
night you had a
remember
motel room.
If it was, maybe it was your mother, I don't remember. I know that somebody stayed with us.
I don't remember
May have
that.
been
I've blocked
a
that
couple.
out, fortunately. Fortunately, there are some things you can block out. But then when we got to Canada, it just went and
Yeah,
went and
yeah,
went.
yeah.
And that gravel road, you
Oh,
know, the
rough
dust and
and dust and
How
narrow.
far
And,
is it across Canada? Do you remember?
3,000 miles.
How many?
Yeah.
About 3,000.
yeah.
No, not really.
Well, you're not too far off
yeah, it's
because it's when we went up, we drove that pickup up 3 years ago, I think. It was 6,002 miles from Ava, Missouri to Anchorage. And I remember somebody saying that it was 4,400 from Gallup.
yeah, that could be.
And so, you know, time you get to the Canadian border, you still got 3,000 left.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, you know, you see on the television, you see pictures of Canada, on RFD, they're showing them farming those big, and it just,
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's the first
that's
part of
east of the Rockies. It's just like Colorado Springs
Yeah.
and everything. It just goes all the way to the Canadian border. The prairies are butted right up against the mountains the whole way. And if you're west of the divide, or you know, out of the plains, then it's not
Then
that
it's not
way.
that
But you
way.
do get long stretches of
well, that's what's
Gently
so
rolling
bad
hills
about
and-
going from here to Gillette.
mm-hmm.
You know, you just go out and there's nothing.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
sagebrush doesn't even get very high, you know?
No, that's the same thing when you come out at where in the world would it be? Grand Prairie? I don't know where it comes out of the mountains anyhow. I remember when we flew when the boys and I flew our plane down.
It seemed like we really got into the mountains at Dawson Creek. I mean, it started really getting into trees and,
yeah, that's where you hit the timber, was at Dawson
Mhm.
Creek.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's
And,
where
and then
Blackfish
and then you
were.
started getting the rolling hills,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and then there was Pink Mountain.
yeah. Yeah, it was.
I wanted to go back and drive it again, get a motorhome and drive it, and Milton said, there is no way in my lifetime that we're going to drive that highway.
Well, I've driven it several times, and
It does get better.
what was it, 4 years ago that we went, 3 years ago, something like that? Why, I told Sally, I said, let's just drive this year. You know, it's been a long time, let's just drive this year. And so we drove, and we drove, and we drove. And then we had the pickup up there, and we had to drive the blankety blank thing back. And I made her promise that if I ever said, let's drive again, she's to,
Take your keys away.
yeah, take my keys away or hit me in the head with a baseball bat or something. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Now, if you could get somebody that wanted you to deliver a
Yeah.
car for them up
Where
there,
you went
so you
one
could
way. Yeah.
go one way
Yeah.
and then take the ferry back,
See,
you'd
we
be
had
okay.
a friend who would come up from Colorado, Old
Mhm.
Slats, and he took Rainwater's car up to them one year. Remember that?
Mhm.
And then he flew back,
Mhm.
but
Well,
he usually just flew.
Charlie, Larry, and Crystal one time got a deal to take a brand new motorhome from Albuquerque to Anchorage. And they paid all the expenses
Wow.
and gave them 3 weeks to get there or something like they were just, you know, delivering the
Mhm.
motorhome. And
Well, that must not have been too bad.
no,
Yeah.
except they, Crystal locked them out of the motorhome and she wouldn't let them in.
Oh,
She
And
got on her high horse about something.
and when she finally got done, finally let them in, then Charlie turned her over his knee and blistered her. And she was 17.
Oh,
And that still comes up on
I bet it
occasion.
does.
I'll be darned.
But one of my strongest memories of the Clam Beach was the Parazoo boys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got pictures.
Do you? I don't have any. I may have a picture of Joe somewhere, but
Oh.
I remember I used to sit and watch old man Parazoo with his big beard and no teeth, and he smoked Bull Durham and he lit it with kitchen matches. And the end of that cigarette would be a good half-inch inside of his beard,
Yeah.
and he'd get her lit up again. And I sat there and watched that guy all summer waiting for him to fire off his beard.
well, you know, that's the way Johnny Gordon down there at Hot Springs, he'd do that. He didn't have any teeth. He didn't have a beard.
Yeah,
He'd smoke those things down to where they were just, you know, a stub.
yeah.
And he'd work around, you know, light that thing up again, and away you go, you know.
Well, that Clam Beach was oh man, that was
That's quite an experience,
that was a
wasn't it?
conglomeration of characters.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
They had everything from winos off of the waterfront in
Yep.
Seattle
Yep.
to people out of the
Winos from
Ozarks that
the
had moved to
milkshake.
Alaska, yeah, and to this group of hicks from
And
all
the
points
old,
along.
old Dick Rutt, the postmaster, always called it the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark. And of course, they really played it up, you know. They'd come to town with their 6 guns strapped on and their big old hats and a few horses.
Yeah, yeah. They made an entrance. Yeah. The
Lewis
Bar
and Clark,
Five.
the Bar 5. Well, you know, it's been 3-4 months ago why they asked me to give talk in church one day, you know. And so I was aiming primarily at the teenagers,
Uh-huh.
you know, and I was telling them that there's nothing that is as exciting or will change your life more than really getting a faith in Christ. You know, that's the and so I just kind of say, you know, I said, I've flown airplanes, I've fished crab boats, I rode a whale through Ketchimack Bay one time. I said, we homesteaded in Alaska, and I reeled off 3 or 4, you know, and I said, but nothing has ever made the impression or the impact on me as getting right with the Lord. And afterwards, one old guy come up to me and he says, "Are you really Louis L'Amour?" and then another one come up. He says, "I need to talk to you." I was, "Okay, what?" "Tell me about riding a whale."
Totally missed the point.
Yeah, totally missed the point. The point wasn't the whale. The point was
Well,
Faith.
everybody stayed on that conversation. Huh?
now they heard what they wanted to hear, I guess. Well, my tape is just about out.
Well, there's
We can always be thankful.
What, that the tape's out?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure we can come up with some more stories. Do you remember the time that you and I, and I'm sure you do, you and I and Eileen took her Volkswagen down to Truth or Consequences
I do.
and tried to ford the creek there, and the battery was under the back seat, and Eileen was driving like she stole it, like she always
yeah,
did,
yeah.
and she hit it, and I think Deana told her gun it to get across the creek.
I don't remember that. I probably
And
did.
so she hit that creek just full bore, you know, and hit some rocks, and the rocks come up and bent the floorboard in and broke the battery.
Oh,
And we made it on home, but we got out the next morning. I don't think we made it up the hill.
I don't remember.
I think we had to stop at
There's
the
a
bottom of the
pretty good
hill.
From the
Yeah,
barn up
yeah.
to the top.
Let
of
me
the
tell
house.
you, it was a hill.
Yeah, it was.
Especially packing 2 buckets of milk.
Yeah.
And we got out and the car wouldn't start, and she couldn't figure out why, and then realized something got spilled in the back seat.
Oh,
Acid everywhere.
Yeah, acid
Oh.
everywhere. Ate the bottom end out of that car and nothing flat. But